Democratic leaders seem to have a new motto lately, quote, "We break it, you pay for it." Now, outgoing Minnesota Governor Tim Walz is demanding American taxpayers bail out his state. Now, this comes after he let fraud run wild, and he egged on protesters to film ICE agents trying to arrest violent criminal migrants. Well, now he's proposing a $10 million relief package for businesses affected by the immigration enforcement.
We're going to be proposing a first-time $10 million one-time targeted loans, forgivable loans that we know, and I want to be very clear, is a very small piece of this. The federal government needs to pay for what they broke here. There are going to be accountability on the things that happen, but one of the things is the incredible and immense costs that were borne by the people of this state. The federal government needs to be responsible. You don't get to break things and then just leave without doing something about it.
And Walz's partner in fraud, the Minnesota Attorney General Keith Ellison, was grilled by Republicans over his reported ties to Somali fraud defendants, with Senator Josh Hawley even calling for jail time.
Whistleblowers came to you as early as 2019. Let's look. As early as 2019, whistleblower. Don't talk over me. As early as 2019, it's my hearing, pal. As early as 2019,
don't call me
whistleblowers came to, well, I should call you prisoner because you ought to be in jail.
Well, we'll see what you can do about it.
So, Jesse, it takes a serious amount of delusion to have fraud amounting to $9 billion. David Hoke tells me it's way higher than that in your state, and say, taxpayers, give me more money.
So they've lost, I think, $20 million a week, and this thing was going on for almost 2.5 months. So a $10 million reparation check is not going to cut it. It's a gesture. Any other governor, looking at Walz, looking around the country, no one's following this guy's lead. This guy tanked his economy. He tanked his reelection. 2 people are dead. 100 ICE Watch people are now under federal investigation. And the media is not writing stories about how this guy Walz is surrounded in glory. They have moved on to Epstein and moved on to other things. No one is writing about how Walz was the man here. They are now writing stories, the mainstream media, about how Trump and Homan look reasonable and effective. This guy tried to lock horns with the federal government, lost big time, and is now under federal investigation. This is not the way to play it.
No, it's not. And Kennedy, when you look at this guy had to step aside in the governor's race, step aside. And now he's saying, give me more money, as if we just forgot about the fraud that was exposed just a month ago.
Well, it's very interesting because, you know, his verbiage, like, you can't just break something and leave. And it's like, bro, that's what you did with your entire gubernatorial process. Like, you wrecked everything, and you couldn't even run for a 3rd term with that massive national profile because you have tanked your state. So instead of focusing on bringing businesses to Minnesota, they were bringing people from other parts of the world who, you know, some of them were engaging in fraud to the tune of up to $9 billion, maybe even more. And it's problematic for him because he knew about it and he punished the whistleblowers and let it fester. And the only good thing that's happened to Tim Walz has been the aggression with ICE agents and the violent protests in the streets, because that took all the cover away from the fraud and the failure. And the worst thing that happened to him was Tom Homan coming in saying, you know, we're going to draw this down and only leave a few agents. And now we're communicating and cooperating with officials in different county jails throughout the state, and things will be much better. That's horrible news for Tim Walz. It's very hard for him to stick his little cup out and bust for nickels from the federal government when now all the focus is going to be retrained on the ways that they fleeced the federal government and royally screwed people in Minnesota who, frankly, deserve a lot better. They know that. Jacob Fry's crocodile tears, you know, go fill up your own cup and drink yourself on some remote island, not in your dumb state.
Emily, I want you to listen to this. So Tim Walz went a little further. He's worried about generational trauma. Listen to this.
The fact of the matter is, they left us with deep damage, generational trauma. They left us with economic ruin in some cases. They left us with many unanswered questions. Where are our children?
mean, they're sleeping safely because illegal immigrants are no longer roving the streets, criminal records.
Right, I can't, oh my gosh. His one-man show is so stale and so off. He reminds me of those, you know, that like literally body of law where burglars and robbers will break into homes, injure themselves, and then sue the homeowner. He had a massive tantrum in his state. He is totally disqualified and unqualified to continue leading it, and yet still manages to put the onus on the federal government and blame everyone else. He reminds me of like a 13-year-old girl having a tantrum after being disciplined, where it's like, no, daddy, but then asking for money. Because remember, he refused to follow, enforce, and rejected all of the federal government's laws that were trying to protect the citizens of his state, but then demanded more money from them right now after his fraud scandal. But you know what? He does this all the time. Because remember what happened in 2020 after he also led to the state burning down? He asked the government, you guys, for $15 million then. Thank goodness they said, no, this was your mess to clean up, your $500 million mess to clean up, because you abdicated your duty to keep your citizens safe and to keep those buildings protected. So this is just his MO. He sees the federal government as a cash cow, but with no authority whatsoever. And he is the one facing a zero dearth of authority.
Greg.
You know, I was listening. He reminds me of the skipper from Gilligan's Island if you were gay.
Alan Hale?
Alan Hale Jr.
R.I.P.
Yeah, because he was very bombastic and useless, but this is worse. I think what's infuriating about this is that he's still, like, out there. You know, it's like, and how kind of, like, casual he is when he says this garbage. It's like, he's just realized nothing's going to happen to him. Like, it's just like, this is what happens. It's like, you know, we're going to talk about later on my show, but like Hawley, you know, all Ellison has to do to him is saying, no, that's not true. It's like you yell at these people, they go, no, that's not true. So what happens next? I don't know what happens. And is it gall or stupidity that Walz is doing this? Does he know that he can get away with it? You know, he's called everybody Nazis. He refused to cooperate, and that created the violent environment. And it's like what Emily said. He's like a drunk driver suing the pedestrian he ran over because he got a dent in the car. But he must have some secret knowledge that he can get away with this, and that is to me the most frustrating thing.
Maybe it's Kamala nudes.
Well, you know, the best thing Kamala ever did was prove to the world that man exists. Because I would not believe he would exist unless I actually saw that it did. I've never seen any creature like that. You know, the real worry for Minnesota is, again, the civil suits over the injuries and death of people in these, you know, cop-free zones, because they're going to get 10-figure settlements.
Yeah, it's amazing she had a face-to-face interview with him and still chose him for a running mate. Big blunder.
Oh, breaking news.
Well, Fox News alert. We just got some breaking news in the search for Nancy Guthrie. The Pima County Sheriff talking to Jonathan Hunt a little bit ago. Listen to this. The DNA found in the house was not Nancy's. He also said, quote, a lot is happening right now. Jonathan, what did you learn?
Well, good afternoon to you. I just walked out of the sheriff's office just about 5 minutes ago after a sit-down with Sheriff Chris Norris. Now, very interesting. The DNA they have sent for testing that was found in the house is not from Nancy Guthrie. The implication, obviously, is that neither is it from the family members that, of course, they will have checked their DNA already. Could it be from some other worker who was in that house at some point? Yes, but very interesting that the sheriff was keen to make the point. DNA found in the house, not Nancy Guthrie's. Now, what is DNA? DNA could be blood. It could be other bodily fluids. It could come from a hair. It could come from a fingernail. But that is being tested now at the lab that the Sheriff's Department has used for many years down in Florida. Another thing, you've heard all this talk over the last 24 hours or so of a glove. First of all, the FBI was saying a glove had been sent for testing that was found in the house, we believed. Then the sheriff said no glove found in the house. So we weren't sure whether this glove even existed. Sheriff Nanos has now confirmed to Fox that a glove was found, is being tested. It was not found in the house, though. Here's the sheriff on that glove.
Where was this glove found?
About 2 miles away.
And when was it found? I think it was just a couple of days ago when this story broke out that the sheriff's not. Look.
So no glove was found in the house?
Absolutely not, ever.
Or on the property?
Or on the property.
So one other very potentially significant development we want to bring you. While we were in talking to the sheriff, our cameraman Brian Ullman, eagle-eyed as ever, spotted both the mobile command center and the bomb squad moving out of here. He also noted that a SWAT vehicle that is parked always out the back here is gone. The last time we saw any of those vehicles moving was when they detained that man down in Rio Rico, about 60 miles south of Tucson. He, of course, was cleared and released, but those vehicles moving again right now, that could obviously be potentially significant. Perhaps in the next few hours we will hear about them detaining somebody else, but very significant that all three of those vehicles moved at the same time. Back to you guys.
Jonathan, we're about to broaden this out, but a quick question about the DNA in the home. It would not be unusual for an individual to have DNA in their home so long as they were not a recluse. So do you get the impression that this is something beyond the usual finding of DNA in the home and it's significant?
Yes, because obviously they found a lot of DNA in that home. They probably found the DNA of relatives, some other workers who they've since been able to rule out. The fact that the sheriff is talking about DNA found in Nancy Guthrie's home, not belonging to Nancy Guthrie, still being tested right now, seems to me very significant indeed.
Jonathan, it's Kennedy. I have a question about the Pima County Sheriff's Department and the FBI working together, because the Pima County Sheriff has told us that it takes a lot of time for them to use their typical labs to get those DNA samples back. And that's why we saw such a lag over the first week and a half of this investigation. Why aren't they using the FBI resources, which are clearly quicker and more comprehensive?
Oh, but the sheriff's argument here is simply that they have used a particular lab for these kind of tests that is based in Florida for many, many years. He said, I think going back maybe 40 years, we've used the same lab. So the initial samples from that first search of the crime scene on Sunday, February the 1st, were sent down to that Florida lab. So the sheriff's argument is that it is much simpler, much cleaner to keep sending all the samples to the same lab so that everything is being tested in one place. Now, the sheriff did add that if the FBI says to me, meaning himself, that they want to retest any material up at the National Lab in Quantico, Virginia, then obviously he will give that to them. He also says, Kennedy, on the point of cooperation, he says there is no daylight between the FBI and local law enforcement here. They are working together. They want nothing more than to solve this case. And in the words of the sheriff, there are no egos here. Kennedy?
Jonathan, it's Emily. Did he make any indication whether the next steps would be, for example, or has been in the process of profiling in CODIS or doing genealogical testing with a differentiation that this is not Nancy's, i.e., do we have an answer as to whose or who it might be related to?
He did not specifically talk about that. I mean, obviously, they are going through every level of testing that you can imagine. And all I can talk about is an impression here. But the impression I get is that they have clearly ruled out a lot of people in terms of that DNA that was found in the house, those closest perhaps to Nancy Guthrie, and they still need to test more. So they're looking into it. They're going to go through, obviously, every possible route of that. And I'm not an expert on the way DNA testing is done, and the sheriff admitted he's not the expert on that as well. He has told things, and those things are underway. But clearly, they're leaving no stone unturned in their search here. It's frustrating for them as well, Emily. I talked to the sheriff, how exhausted are you? And he said, we are just not stopping. Nobody is showing any signs of exhaustion here because we are working 24/7. And again, he emphasized we, meaning him and the FBI. There are, by the way, he gave me the figure. He said there are some 400 investigators on the ground here in total. That is local, state, and federal. So they're going through everything. But when you think they got 18,000 calls into the sheriff's office alone, I think he said another 13,000 calls to the FBI. That's 31,000 tips. So even if you have 400 agents, it takes an awful lot of time to go through that. And then they're going to mount in more video evidence coming in over the last 24 hours, because remember, they expanded the area that they wanted people to look at security cameras. They said 2-mile radius, go all the way back on any of your cameras you have, Ring, Nest, Blink, whatever, to January 1st. So that is a mountain of evidence. And you're going to see all these videos of people at front doors and everything. They've got to chase down every one of those leads. I'll tell you this, there are hundreds, dozens certainly of homeless and itinerant people we drive past every single night as we change locations here in Tucson, a lot of them carrying backpacks. But anybody who's got any clip of any one of those all the way back to January 1st, the FBI and the sheriff's deputies have to chase it down. It's an arduous task. But the sheriff said to me, we are confident that we will absolutely find out what happened to Nancy Guthrie, and we will bring whoever did this to justice. He also said, to put a button on this, he believes, he has to believe, that Nancy Guthrie is still alive.
Jonathan, do you know when they found this DNA? Did they find it on day one? Did they find it today? Because the sheriff was hot-dogging it like crazy the first couple days and then got muzzled by the FBI when they swooped in. Then they have this beef, and a day after the beef, this guy's like shot out of a cannon making this huge announcement about new DNA. So what's going on here?
Given that, Jesse, given that the DNA was sent to the sheriff's lab that they like to use down in Florida, and given that you remember they said they were clear with the crime scene on, I think it was either the Monday evening, she disappeared on the Sunday, obviously, or perhaps it was a Tuesday. Remember, they said they were cleared with the crime scene. I think you can be fairly confident that that DNA was found in Nancy Guthrie's home in that initial search of the home, that initial going through the crime scene, which makes it obviously even more significant. Initial search, they find DNA, they know it's not Nancy Guthrie's. Now the challenge is to find a match to that DNA and either detain that person or clear that person, Jesse.
Jonathan Hahn, thank you. Keep us updated. Well, we are going to take a break here at the 5. I know Greg needs to take a bathroom break, so that will be all. But coming up, the media loves to pretend that President Trump is the big bad wolf for press freedom. But CNN's Caitlin Collins just blew that house down.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.